destroying some of the exhibits, which a lot of them happen to be of wood.
Right. Yeah, it's all right. I'm going to start the webinar, which will let people in. It looks like we've got a quorum.
Hey, Susan. Hey, Madge. We only see a little bit of your head, Madge. We want it. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Now you're upside down.
Sorry, I got to mute the live stream. Okay, we're all set now.
Let me close this door.
Michelle, are you starting us off or? Oh, you're leaving.
Yeah, I could. So we could get started, Mark, because we're recording.
Yeah, you're good to go.
All right. Hey, Jay.
I see a bunch of people all named Francis Escanio, and then Henry Miller and Jennifer Johnson. Since there's only like 7 of them, would it be okay if I put everybody into the same Zoom so we can see everybody?
Yeah. Of course.
I can't put, there's somebody on by phone. What last is 482, 305, 482.
Maybe Paul, is Paul Fischer?
Paul's not on either committee, I don't think.
I know, but sometimes he comes.
Okay.
I sent him the information. I also sent it to Christian.
Excellent.
We talked about it. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Mark, I don't know if it's you or me, but I can't hear you.
You can't hear anything?
We can hear you, Jay.
Yeah, we can hear you. Turn up your volume a little bit if you can, Jay.
So who was the real Francis Escanio?
She's actually not here. That's my colleague in government affairs. I'm here in her place, Alina Agusti. Thank you for having us all.
Oh, okay, welcome.
Thank you.
So we have a joint meeting with the Parks Department. It's Preservation and Parks.
Committee.
Because both committees are affected by what the Met's going to do. We appreciate that you came. My name is Michelle Parker. I'm a co-chair Preservation, and my co-chair is Kay Carpin. And the Parks co-chairs are Clary Newelt and...
That's it.
That's it.
Oh, okay. The chair. And I guess we could get started because yours is the only, Sue Schwartz wants double credit for attending this meeting.
Yeah.
You're on both committees? Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah, it's in the mail.
That's our first resolution, double credit for Susan. Oh,
Actually, I was trying to take the meeting minutes, but Mark Dillard gazumped me on this because I thought I'd get credit from both Clary and Michelle and Kay. But no, rock on, Mark.
Opportunist.
Yeah.
Nice try.
This is my return to the committee as a voting member. So so I thought the way to kick that off is to do the minutes.
Especially since there's only one item.
And since I'm occupying the floor to say that I'm taking the minutes, it's a good time to say that if you're not Francis Escanio, please spell your name carefully when you first speak. And please bear with me as I try to make an accurate record of what I'm sure will be a great presentation. Thank you.
So who?
Oh, and the other thing is I'm also the host for Zoom purposes, but I've enabled it so that you guys can control the share screen. So if you choose to do that, and I encourage you to do that, then you'll have that function. If you have any problem with it, I have your 2-page set of plans that you forwarded to us back in December, and I can pull those up if you need.
All right, so we can get started. Maybe everybody on CB7 can say their name. Well, you know Mark Diller, and I introduced myself, and I introduced you all to Kay Carpin and to Clary. Anybody else? Peter, you want to make your...
I'm Peter Sampson. I'm an architect. Thank you.
Madge?
Madge Rosenberg, committee member.
Sue?
Susan Schwartz, Preservation and Parks.
Ken?
Ken Coughlin, Parks and Environment Committee.
Barbara?
Parks Committee.
Jay? Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara.
No, I'm sorry. I'm Barbara Adler, and I'm on the Parks Committee.
Jay? That's Jay Adolph. He's on preservation. Stephen Brown is our chair, the chair of the full board. Doug, because you're on mute, Doug.
Oh, sorry, Doug Kleiman. I'm not on either committee, but I'm vice chair of the board.
That means you're on every committee, right?
Well, not really. Yes and no. I don't know.
All right, Josh.
Josh Cohn, CB7. I'm on this committee.
I think we have everybody. That's everybody from the board. Then I see somebody called Frances Escano, but that's not you because we know she's not here. Who are you?
I am Michael Whetstone from a principal at Beyer Blinder Bell Architects, and of course Frances Escano, who works in government affairs at the Met, sent me this link, which is why you see the name, and I will make sure I spell my name for you, Mark, before
okay.
I start.
Brett?
Hi, everyone. I'm Brett Guyard. I'm the head of capital and infrastructure planning at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Thanks for having us tonight.
Okay, Alina?
Hi, everyone. Alina Gusti. I also work in government affairs at the Met. Thanks for having us.
Who's Amy? Amy Lamberti?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm just watching from the council's office at the Met. Thank you.
Okay, and Henry Miller? Is that a community member or you're?
Henry Miller, I'm with BBB Architects as well, just
okay.
listening.
And Jennifer Johnson? Who's Jennifer Johnson? Do you have any clue? Oh, no, we have Megan Carroll. Are these community members, Mark? Jennifer Johnson and Megan Carroll?
I'm a community member, yes.
Megan, hi.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Yes, welcome. Well, that's a good thing about Zoom. Everybody's name is right in front of us. So who's going to who from the Met? Oh, hi, Megan. Hi. Alina, you going to start? Are you making the presentation for the Met?
I'm actually not making the presentation, but I'll be happy to introduce Brett Gallard, who will be starting the presentation. As she mentioned, she's the head of capital infrastructure planning at the Met. So take it away, Brett.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. I am going to speak very briefly just to frame the project and why it's so important to the Met, although Ken, your background helps us a lot make the argument. So thank you for that.
I'll be happy to duck anytime you want.
Yeah, just put your head down and then I can point to your background. And then I'm going to hand it over to Michael Whetstone to get into all the details and go through the presentation. We have been planning a renovation of the Michael Rockefeller Wing, which houses the arts of Africa, Oceania, and the Americas. It's the South Glass Wing on the Met, and we've been working on this for about 4 years. And even through this current crisis, we've been meeting, at least 20 hours a week about this project throughout. And now we're getting ready to implement the project with the plans to start major construction in about a year. And so we've met preliminarily with Landmarks and reviewed the project at a staff level with them, and we're gearing up for a public hearing on February 9th. And so we've been going around the park and meeting with all of the wonderful community boards. This is our final meeting, and we're really happy to see you all. We started with CB8, and we have worked our way around the park. So the goal of the project is really twofold. It's about addressing our curatorial goals and reimagining the collection on the inside, and also addressing major infrastructure upgrades for the care of the collection. And that includes the replacement of the sloped glazing at the south facade. So we were gifted this collection about 40 years ago as primitive art. And it's really important to us to now reimagine it as the three distinct regions that it is: arts of Africa, arts of the Americas, and arts of Oceania. And the many cultures within those regions. And so why architects are our exhibition designers, and they've been working in coordination with Beyer Blinder Bell on both how the exhibit layout works, all the infrastructure, mechanical upgrades, and then the facade as well. And so why we're here tonight is just to talk about the slope glazing, but I don't want to lose sight of the importance of what's happening on the inside of the building and the need to care for the objects that are on the inside. So, one could argue maybe it wasn't the best idea to have a south-facing wall of glass with light-sensitive art on the other side initially, and Michael will address that in his presentation. But we want to respect the original Kevin Roche master plan and still conserve the art on the inside. And so the goal of this project is really to address condensation, water infiltration, thermal bridging, daylighting control, and also bird safety, but still allow a view out to the park and the original intent of the project. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the sister building to the Rockefeller wing, which is the Temple of Dender, and that the content on the inside of that wing is very different from the content of the AOA collection. The Temple of Dender was outside, and it was always meant to feel like it was outside. It's also north facing, so it's a very different kind of light and conservation requirements. Whereas the objects on the south side are painted wood, delicate textiles. And so we are proposing to do a very state-of-the-art system on this side to protect that art on the inside of the building. And with that, I'll hand it over to Michael, and we welcome your questions afterwards. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett, and thank you everybody for letting us present tonight. I'm Michael Whetstone. I'm a principal at Byerblum Bell Architects. For Mark, that's spelled W-E-T-S-T-O-N-E, since my name doesn't appear there. And I'm going to share my screen and give you the full architectural presentation that we're going to show to landmarks. Okay, I assume you can all see the presentation. All right, so we're talking about the Rockefeller wing at the Met. Of course, because the museum is in Central Park, the community board's procedure is to have us present to all 6 community boards presenting or surrounding the park, which we've done, concluding tonight with CB7, and then our plan is to go to a full public hearing before the Landmarks Commission on February 9th in a couple of weeks. Just to orient you to where we are, here is an aerial photograph of the Met, of course, with Fifth Avenue in the bottom and Central Park at the top and on the sides. And the Rockefeller wing is on the left. That's the south-facing glass wing. And we're proposing to replace the sloped curtain wall. And just to sort of give you some context, historical context, and why we need to go to landmarks. This is a plan of the Met from 1970. It's actually the 1970 master plan by Kevin Roche, John Dinkeloo and Associates. And what you see in pink is what the existing museum building looked like in the mid to late 60s. And when the Landmarks Commission designated the Met as an individual landmark, it was the pink area. And the master plan, which was approved by the Landmarks Commission by Roche Dinkeloo, was to add all the wings in yellow. And all those wings were added as part of a unified plan from around the 1970s, 1980s, and early 90s. And you know them as, of course, the Temple of Dender and the American wing on the north side, and the Rockefeller wing is the biggest one on the south side. And the scope of the project, as far as landmarks concerned, is simply the replacement of that curtain wall, better seen in this aerial view, which shows the context. Fifth Avenue on the right, of course, the park on the left, the south side of the Met at the bottom. And we're talking about this enormous piece of sloped glass glazing, which is 200 feet long and 60 feet tall, quite a monumental piece of building enclosure. The scope of the project, this is a floor plan and section of the Rockefeller wing. So it's a big square on the first floor, 38,000 square feet of galleries, AAOA, which is the Met's abbreviation for Arts of Africa, Oceania, and the Americas. And as Brett said, those collections are going to be completely redesigned, reinstalled, reimagined in a very, very different way. And then the exterior wall facing south, the yellow line that you see, this diagonal yellow line, that is the slope glazing, which we are taking to the Landmarks Commission, and that is, of course, in support of the renovation of the galleries. Of course, only the curtain wall is the landmarks issue. And here's a south elevation of the Met, showing the glass wall in the middle, the McKim and White limestone wing K, which is where the Greek and Roman collection is on the right side, and the Roche Dinkeloo designed, also clad in limestone, modern and contemporary art on the left side with the glass in the middle. And just to go back in time a little bit, this is Kevin Roche's model from the 1970 master plan, showing this sloped glass, sheer, very smooth wall. And as you can see, that even before the days of the gas crisis of the 1970s and our concerns about energy conservation and green architecture, I think they understood that facing south with glass might be problematic. So you can see in this model, they proposed a kind of reflective or more translucent glass at the upper part and a more transparent glass at the bottom where you can see out. And in the construction drawings from 1975, they actually differentiate two kinds of glass, more clear at the bottom and more translucent above. On the left is a photograph of what that wing looked like when it opened in the early 80s. And as you can see, they were fighting the sun from the get-go. You can see these enormous 60-foot high window blinds going floor to ceiling, holding back the light, which you can see beating in at the edges. And now the galleries were, about 15 years ago, were altered so that the second floor paintings gallery was extended closer to the glass. But it's still the case that they have those big blinds in front of the windows. At a certain point, about 15 years ago, when they did that renovation I just showed you, they wanted to see if they can do better with the glass because too much light was getting in for the conservation of the objects. So they applied a plastic film on the outside, which did not last very long, and as you can see, is a highly deteriorated condition. But in addition to the plastic film, which is just applied, looking in a deteriorated condition, the curtain wall itself is not in very good shape. It's quite corroded and beginning to fall apart, end of its useful service life. And one of the reasons is the problems of condensation. The thermal bridging in this curtain wall system were not quite adequate for the museum's internal environment, which is kept at 70 degrees and 50% humidity. So in the winter months, the curtain wall gets too cold and a lot of condensation forms, and it's led to a lot of corrosion. So between the glass that's inadequate and the framing system that's beginning to corrode, the decision was in the renovation of these galleries that we would support it by completely replacing this curtain wall with an improved version. So here's the curtain wall as it is, 12,000 square feet of glass facing south over the new galleries. And these are the goals for the new glazing system. One, of course, as I mentioned, they're greater resistance to condensation, absolutely critical because the museum is kept at quite a high humidity, more than you would see in commercial or residential buildings. We want to improve the glass so that it better controls the sun. We would love to get rid of having the shades there full height year round. With new glass technology, we can control the light transmittance and UV rays much better. And so we want to do that. Of course, thermal and insulation R value improvements are important. That way the energy costs and the loss of heat through the glass will be less. We want to try to eliminate the shades so we can see if we can get a more of a visual connection so you can see out the windows to the park. Visual connection between outside and inside, something that has never happened because the shades have always been there. And of course, the last piece, in addition to all the light levels being appropriate for the art, is a bird safety. As you know, glass buildings, especially ones that are slightly tilted towards the sky, are very reflective. Birds are often confused and think that it's open sky, and they fly right into the glass. And many birds die from the collisions with the glass. So we are going to use a new technology to make the glass more bird safe. We're also going to work on repairs of gutters and flashing, adjacent masonry, and improve the mechanical system as well. So that's all together. So just first our removals. We're removing only the sloped glass curtain wall. All the structure and surrounding construction, of course, remains. And when we put in the new curtain wall, we're going to make a couple of changes to the system. And these changes will look visually different. And that is why we are taking this proposal to you and to the Landmarks Commission for a public hearing, is to approve some of these changes, all of which are in the support of a better performing curtain wall. The first change that will be obvious is that we're going to change the grid of glass size. I'll go into the reasons for that in a moment, but the glass is now quite small size, 2 foot 6 inches wide, 5 feet tall, 12 rows high. And we're going to go to a larger piece of glass, which we're proposing, 3 foot 7 inches wide, 7 foot 6 inches high, and only 8 rows of glass. We think that, I'll tell you the reasons for these changes in a moment, but we think that the overall effect will be quite subtle. There's still going to be in the same plane the sloped glass, the all glass wall between the two buildings made out of solid limestone. And so the overall effect, I think, will be the same, existing at the top and proposed at the bottom. And a little bit on the glazing strategy. Just like Roche Dinkeloo showed in their model from 1970, we are also trying to have a differentiation of glass from top to bottom. But in this case, we have 8 rows of glass, and they are going to be each different, so that the view zone, the most transparent glass, will be at the bottom with its higher height, so people can see straight out. And then as you go higher and higher, the glass becomes increasingly more translucent, blocking more and more light and becoming more opaque as you get to the top. So the visuals, looking at an interior elevation for the 60-foot high wall, the 2 people standing in the galleries on the first floor, you can see out at the bottom. And then the glass is more of a glowing, translucent effect as you go higher and higher and higher. And we're achieving that. This is the glazing assembly, triple glazed with inner and outer laminated lights. So this inner lamination film is what's controlling the differentiation in translucency. And then just a 3D view of that. On the left, you can see the existing condition with the smaller pieces of glass and the shades. On the right, what we're proposing, larger pieces of glass and a higher head height for this first row. 2 reasons for changing the grid size. One is that the curators wanted a more open and less of a cluttered grid, more views out and more connection to the outside. And then the second is just energy efficiency. With a kind of an artificially small piece of glass and more framing, the walls is much less efficient than it could be. The glass is more efficient than the framing. So the bigger the pieces of glass and the less framing, the more energy efficient the wall is. We really did not want to have shades, and we won't have the full height shades. But as our consultant who we're working with in daylighting, Arup, has revealed in their analyses, is that during the summer months when there's many hours of daylight, there will be still too much light coming in the bottom row. So we think that during some of the summer months when the light levels are high, we will have a shade that only goes up 1 row from the bottom. That'll be there temporarily and seasonally, not going the full height as it is now. And so there'll be moments when you can see out and moments when there'll be that shade for the bottom to protect. But it's a differential condition. This is a rendering on the right of what the galleries will look like. We think that without the shades, and this is why architects' interior design for the exhibit, we think there will be a much more friendly and bright look with the glass more controlled in a very careful way. I think a friendlier and more open look. Next, I want to talk about the glazing system, which is the other big change. So at the top is what's there now, and that's kind of a conventional 1980s curtain wall. And it has these aluminum caps on the outside of the mullion between the glass. And these caps and the connections through between the glass to connect the caps to the rest of the curtain wall on the inside are one of the real causes of inefficiency energy-wise and condensation. Those connections between the glass just form thousands and thousands of little cold bridges. And that's one of the reasons that we have the condensation. And when this building was first built, the museum hadn't quite adopted the 70-degree, 50% humidity year-round. But when it did, this wall was just technologically not able to keep up. So we always have that water dripping off on the inside. If we try to create more heat on the inside of the wall with the radiators, et cetera, if we heat it up too high, then the temperature of the galleries gets too high, and we need to keep it 70 degrees. So it's a little bit of a constant HVAC feedback war, which the museum is not winning. And so it's one of the reasons to replace this with the newer technology of silicone glazing, structural silicone glazing. So in this case, we have a triple glazed piece of glass, the bottom being the proposed details. And rather than having the glass attached with a pressure cap on the outside, the glass is held on from the inside on the warm side. So we've eliminated the cold bridging. Between the pieces of glass, there's just an outer band of sealant. which keeps water out, and all the connections are made from the inside. So again, this is kind of a big visual change in the way the wall will look, but we're not making it for any kind of aesthetic determination. This is all made for technological reasons. This kind of improvement in performance with silicone glazing is just really, really, really big. And it's something that's probably not as critical in a conventional residential or commercial construction, but in the museum environment where that very, very high humidity level is being kept up in the winter, it really becomes a critical factor. So we're proposing that change. A little bit about the glass assembly and the bird safing. So I showed you that the inner laminated glass will have a film that controls the light transmittance. The outer film in the laminated glass will have frits for bird safety. Because birds, when they see frits, they read it as a solid surface. There are now standards for this, which we followed, and they avoid flying straight into the glass. The frits are visible up close, but not so much far away. These are some of our glass samples in our office, tilted 20 degrees from the vertical, just like the building will be, and you'll mostly see a reflection of sky in either case. The left being the bottom row of glass and the right being the top row of glass. Interestingly enough, these frits are actually going to be required by the New York City Building Code starting in 2021. The DOB adopted a new bird-friendly materials section of the building code. So buildings that are primarily glass will all have these frits starting this year. Here's just details of the top and the bottom and the sides. We'll keep the exact same profiles and just improve the insulation and flashing details. And then just getting to the rendering. This is the existing condition with the visible grid and the small glass size. And in the proposed condition, it'll look like this. You can see there's a little bit of a differentiation on the glass, though, because it's tilted, it'll always be catching some reflection on the sky, just like car windshields do. You always see a little bit of sky reflection with tilted glass. We think that it's a fairly subtle difference in the look, and it still maintains the glass volume between the limestone buildings. But it is a change. Here's two other views, existing and new. There's one important thing I think to point out about how this building is sited, which is it's actually not the case that you can walk straight up to that glass wall, just like it's a facade on the street. The way it's sited is that the glass wall is up a hill and about 50 or 75 feet away from the pedestrian path in the park running along the south side of the building. So that really you look at this glass wall in the background, usually through a screen of trees. And because it's really background behind trees, I really think that most people who would walk by this wall, the new design would not even realize that it had changed. I think it's quite subtle when it's a background kind of building. Similarly, this is a view from Fifth Avenue with the McKimmon and White facade on the right. And you can see 200 feet away from the street is a very bleak angle above the entrance to the parking garage. You can see the sloped glass wall. So again, I think it's quite far away and will be a subtle difference when viewed from the street. One of the questions that the landmarks staff asked us about was, is this glass wall that with the new technology going to be visible exactly adjacent to some of the other parts of the museum where the glass wall comes down to the park? And so we did this drawing in response to that. You can see this enormous block of the modern and contemporary wing, which is about a 200 foot by 200 foot block of limestone walls. That really is creating quite a separation between the nearest glass reaching the ground, which is the Petrie Sculpture Court on the west side of the building. It's about 400 or 500 feet away. So we do think that this new glass wall of the Rockefeller wing is visually quite isolated from the rest of the large pieces of glass on the Roche Dinkeloo additions. You probably have thought of this, and Brett mentioned it, but the Temple of Dender, of course, is the mirror image twin sibling of the Rockefeller wing on the north side of the building. The Landmarks Commission also didn't want us to address the Rockefeller wing piecemeal. They said, well, you have to at least tell us how you might one day address the other side. And so they asked us to include a potential future treatment of the Temple of Dender not as part of this proposal. It's not part of this application, but simply for reference for something that might happen in the future. So there's no funding, there's no definite schedule, there's no definite plans to do this work at the Temple of Dender. But if it ever were to happen, the general intent would be to do something similar. So here's the plan showing the mirror images, the Rockefeller and Temple of Dender, just built a couple of years apart. One faces north, one faces south. That's really the only difference in the wall. So the Temple of Dender wing is not fighting the sun, but the problems of condensation and corrosion are really exactly the same, and the wall's in similar condition. So it may be replaced at some point in the future, but again, no definite plans yet. That's of course the interior, the iconic space with pure north light. But in the end, at some point in the future, the intent is that the two twins would look more alike. We'd use a similar system for the Temple of Dender, but again, it's not part of this application, and it is something that's not definitely planned yet. Similarly, the Landmarks Commission asked us about the skylights on both of these wings. They're all glass roofs illuminating the second floor. These are actually not visible from the park, particularly except the very front row. So these would not be perhaps an issue for a full public hearing, more of a staff level approval. But those skylights are of a similar construction, and our plan in the end would be to replace them with a similar system with the silicone glazing. The last piece of this presentation, and thank you for staying with me so far, because I know this is a long presentation, just a precedent, which is that we are currently working on another large skylight replacement at the Met, approved by Landmarks Commission in 2017, which uses a similar system. And this is the wings ABC, or the European Paintings Galleries skylights on the west side of the museum. These are actually the oldest 19th century wings of the museum, kind of buried in the building. You can't really see the original architecture anymore. But in this area, the blue is all skylights that are being replaced. And this is a 300-foot long west-facing wall of glass that the Landmarks Commission approved us using a very similar system. It's actually about half under construction and half finished right now. Those skylights illuminate the European Paintings Galleries. Half of them, phase one, just opened to the public a couple of weeks ago. And the other half will be finished in a couple of years. But I just wanted to show this to you because it's actually quite similar. The proposed glazing system facing west at the Met is going to be really the same thing as what we're proposing at the Rockefeller wing. And when we went to the Landmarks Commission with this change in skylight technology, similar to this one, we pointed out that the roofs and skylight technology at the Met has evolved over many years from the 19th century that you can see at the top to what it is now. Right now, this facade is hidden by the Lehman wing built in the 1970s. But every few generations, the Met has to replace all of its skylights. It's happened every 30, 40, 50 years for the last 140 years. In 1907, when McKim White came to the Met, the first thing they did was replace all the skylights on the 19th century buildings. This is a skylight detail by McKim White from 1907. And there's a note here that we reprinted in white. It's that little small note on the drawing. It says that this skylight section is intended as a standard of quality. Contractors shall use this type or another equally good to be approved by the architects. And we took this to mean that really the Met should always have the most current skylight technology because it's just such a critical function in preserving the art, letting in daylight, but preserving the building and conserving the artifacts. And we looked at the history of evolving skylight technology at the Met. This is part of our presentations for those European paintings wings. But you can see that subtly skylight technology does change over the years. And when the Met wrote the approval of the binding report for this project, they noted that that part of the history of the Met is in fact constantly changing skylight technologies, and that it is sort of a customary and normal thing to always be updating them. The skylights are in the same place, approximately the same size and color, but changes in the details and sizes of glass inevitably change over the years, and they found that to be appropriate for this project. And so we are asking you and them to find a similar finding for the Rockefeller wing. Just to complete, this is the before and after rendering, a very subtle change of the skylights as they were facing west, and the skylights as they are going in now. and then a couple of construction photos. That same system that we are putting in the Rockefeller wing. Here's a construction photo of the west-facing skylights currently being put in. So thank you for listening to that. The last slide in the presentation is this is construction schedule. Just for your information, the idea of this project is that we would start construction in the fall of 2021, late this year. It would take about 14 months and be completed at the end of 2022. So thank you again for your attention for all of that, and we welcome any of your comments and questions.
Okay, Kay, unless you have a question, can I turn this part of the meeting over to Clary? Because this is a joint Parks and Preservation meeting.
Well,
That would be great.
okay,
Hey,
I'm not.
Clary, you want to take over this part with the questions?
Sure. In fact, I was hoping.
Could I jump in for
whoever-
one quick second? I'm sorry. Paul Fischer did in fact join us. I couldn't see that until we exited the demonstration. And the phone call apparently is our colleague Doug McGowan.
Oh, good.
Who's been with us the whole time, but he's on the phone, so I don't think I can promote him to panelist. But Doug, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to acknowledge you being here all the whole time. Thanks.
Yeah, welcome, Doug. We have a pretty good representation, I think, from the Parks and Environment Committee. We've got one overlapping member, Susan Schwartz. So thanks, Michelle. And had you not turned to me, I was actually going to raise my hand virtually, or I didn't have to, I guess, but because I have a couple questions, and if you don't mind, I'll start with those. One of the first one is pretty straightforward, and that is to Michael or whoever. What is the construction cost and the total project cost approximately of this project?
Can I defer from someone from the Met to answer that?
I assume that's not confidential information.
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated because there's so many pieces to the project. There's the infrastructure piece and the glass replacement piece, but it's a $70 million project. And that's the total project cost that we're anticipating.
Sure, thanks.
But that includes a lot of other scopes besides just this one.
Yeah, and typically preservation doesn't get involved with.
Oh no, I'm asking not because that really informs a decision about appropriateness.
Okay, we all understand that, and
Sure.
that's how we'll take that information.
Sure.
Thank you.
The other question I had is, I think that you guys did a thoughtful job of deferring to the Roche Dinkaloo 1970s wall, while sort of subtly saying they should have known better about this great big south-facing thing. But then we had to add the blinds. So my question is this: you, with all of the new knowledge and technology you're providing for blinds on the first level of glass, what if, for all your study and goodwill, you get it wrong, and it turns out you need more blinds, like going up another level? Is this design flexible enough to allow for, let's say, another level of blinds?
There could be another level of blinds, and of course the blinds are completely interior and not necessarily related to landmarks approval. However, we actually have a great engineer, a daylighting specialist, the engineering firm of Arup, and everything that we are doing, we are building mock-ups and measuring the light. So before any of this is built, we will have done a large-scale mock-up, and they very carefully test the light levels coming through. So we think that this will be a very, very well-designed piece, and that this very carefully specified glass will perform as intended. We're confident of that.
Yeah, thanks. Those are my questions. Michelle, did you want me to moderate other questions? Or
Yeah, if you don't mind, Clara, that would be great. Right?
Yeah, no, I will say that typically, as I think committee members of my committee know, typically Central Park landmarks applications come to our committee, and sometimes done jointly with the Preservation Committee. The reason we're the host committee or the only committee is that typically the renovations that are proposed, usually by the Conservancy, but sometimes by the Parks Department, have a lot to do with the functioning of the park. They're not just what things look like, but they have a lot to do with park function. This one it's really correct. I was going to say appropriate, no pun intended, but it's quite correct for Michelle and Kay's committee to be the host committee here, because this is really not something that involves how the park functions. It is what this building looks like from the outside, and that's what this project is. So we've got no problems with being the guests at this committee. Are there other people that want to, I don't think anybody's mute. So we can either just have people interpose questions from the committee, or let's do the joint committees first. So if there's anybody from the community that has questions, let me ask you to hold those until we've covered questions from either of the committees, and then we'll look to any questions or comments from the community. So is there anybody, and I think we're all visible enough. You can either just speak or raise your hand or raise your virtual hand. Ken.
Okay. This looks like an aesthetic improvement in addition to being a functional improvement. I just had two questions. One, I was interested in the original drawing from the 73 or whenever it was, which seemed to have right at the bottom level a portico where people could walk. And I was just wondering whether you had considered going back to that, or if you know why it was rejected. It looked very nice to me, but.
Oh yeah, I think in the original, the original design, there was that right when the this wing was built, it was built on top of a parking garage, and there might have been some entrance associated with that parking garage, but since it was built, the parking garage underneath, which is entered right below the Rockefeller wing, will stay as it is.
Okay. Well, I think in the picture, the what you're calling the lower level, that's going to have the curtain sometime of the day or some part of the year.
I see what you're saying.
Would it looked like people were walking in that section?
Sorry, do you mean like there's an entrance there or something? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just sort of like people could walk out onto a veranda.
No, actually, there was never any doors or an intention for doors there. I think it was just people walking inside the model. Okay. Now that I look at the picture, so no, there's no entrances there, nor was there ever intended one.
Okay, and the other question is the translucency that's going to change as you go up. Will that be graduated, or is it going to be abrupt?
It's going to be abrupt for each line of glass. So each of the 8 rows of glass will have a different tint of glass.
Okay.
That's it for Ken. Peter Sampton, you have something?
Yeah, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
In the sloping wall to the south, you indicated that you would have about 8 feet of glass that you could see through.
Yes.
And then the rest is translucent, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
From the inside, when you look south, do you see the towers of 59th Street and 57th Street from there? Can you see the skyline?
I think you mostly just see trees. I think that that there's a lot of trees just south of the building, and they tend to block the view. Perhaps during the winter when there's no leaves, you might be able to see the skyline. But generally, it's a fairly dense a line of trees just to the south of the building.
Because that was what I was wondering. I mean, not that those buildings are so beautiful, but it's the skyline of New York, and for a lot of people visiting the museum from out of town, that kind of view of the skyscrapers, so to speak, might be compelling. And it would mean maybe slightly more see-through glass instead of 8 feet, maybe 16 feet or something like that. Is that something worth considering?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because that sort of has been a struggle, but in working with Arup, we've realized that the translucency is really needed to cut down on the harmful light levels, and without that, we just have to put up the shades again.
I think, Mike, just to jump in, the view is incredible, and I think the Met does offer that from other vantage points, like the roof garden.
Right.
And while I know at least in the summer and fall, you wouldn't be able to see it because of the foliage. There's pretty dense foliage out of that south facing. You may be able to in the winter, but the concern for us and the dance we've had to do with the exhibit design and the slope glazing is we've actually, in order to even allow that 8 feet, shield certain objects. We've done light studies with casework and walls on the inside. And so that would just extend further into the space and create more of these pockets and actually less visibility out because of the collection inside. So I take your point, and I think it's a beautiful one, but hopefully from other areas of the Met, we can offer that.
Okay, are there other?
Thank you, thank you.
Mark Diller. Oh, Michelle, Mark, who wants to go first? Mark. Yeah. Mark Diller.
Thanks. My main question has to do with color from the outside, but I would also encourage, if you are going to make the skyline visible from within that wing, I would propose that we sort of white out the Extel and the super tall towers and make it like a screen of what used to be there. Anyway, on a more serious note, I think we have technology for that. Anyway, on the more serious note, the current view as far, or image of that wall from the outside of the within the park seems to me sort of a not very pleasant green shade. Maybe I'm not being generous. And the image or the rendition that you gave us in this presentation seems more of a paler blue. Is there, first of all, am I just wrong about what it looks like now? And secondly, is it the intention to be the same, or the slightly more pleasant blue is going to be the color?
I think the glass will be low iron glass, so it won't have a greenish tint, which that's something that we can do now. But also because the glass is tilted 20 degrees off the vertical, I think most of what you will see in either case with any opacity or translucency of glass is always going to be a lot of reflection of the sky, because that's just the way a glass works when it's tilted. So I think it's mostly reflection, but I think the color will be a little less green.
I see that a park user who is one of our public members here, Megan Carroll, has affirmed the what the Met representatives have said about the view, and both from the roof and from the trees blocking it down here. Anybody else? Michelle.
I thought Susan was going to ask some questions about the
I think
Frit,
she was. Susan?
but I don't know because Barbara has her hand up.
Who's next? Susan, go ahead.
I just have a fast question, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Did you say that the tint in the glazing could be changed seasonally? And if so, how?
No, the tint in the glazing can't be changed. The only thing that changes is that row of shades that comes up off the floor for the first row of glass.
Okay.
But the glass itself is a fixed tint, changing as it goes up the wall.
All right, thank you.
Susan, there's a rumor you've got a question. Go ahead.
Okay, so my colleagues are sick of me talking about bird watching. So I became a birder in March. I'm a cliche. So I'm just curious if you looked into Ornolux's product, which is the German manufacturer of the glass that Audubon Society recommends.
We actually have been looking at a German manufacturer of glass, and I can't remember the exact name of it right now. However, since the New York Buildings Department adopted for the building code this bird safety, there are actually standards that they refer to, and if it's interesting to you, I can send that reference to you afterwards. But there is kind of an adopted international standard for bird safe products and glass, and that's what we're going to be following. It could be that the product you're mentioning is a similar.
Not that I would ever want to disparage our Department of Buildings, but I would just like to make sure that the resolution that we pass makes a reference to making sure that this is in compliance with whatever the Audubon Society recommends, in addition to whatever DOB says, because I would think that Audubon Society maybe is more whatever. And I'd like to say that it looks great. The changes are significant, but this is not part of the original design. So, bravo for changing it.
Mike, I could just add something about the Ornolux, because
sure,
at one point we did talk to the Audubon Society and do some research, and that product was mentioned to us. And I believe that that's actually a coating on the glass that's baked into a glass as opposed to the frit. So the frit is a dot pattern that has a certain spacing and the birds recognize the dots on the spacing, and that the ornolux is like you don't see the dots, it's an actual coating that creates a distraction, but that they both perform in the same function, which is that the birds see the glass. So I remember being sent pictures of the ornolux. I think it's like, you see this image that's like this, it's like this cross hatch image, which is the same effect as the dots.
Great.
But we're happy to get you information on that, because we actually we did a lot of research. They even counted the birds, unfortunately, that died on that side of the building. So we have a lot of data on that topic and are concerned about it.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course.
I would just comment, it's interesting how quickly the issue of protecting the birds has developed in the building code. Our committee, to my knowledge, first became aware of the issue just a couple of years ago when we were having a presentation by actually DOT on renovating the big rotunda at West 79th Street. And it was somebody from the West Side Naturalists, I think, who brought to our attention and the attention of the very fancy consultants for that project that we don't have at that location anything like a wall, anything like a glass wall, anything like the size of this one, but we have a significant group of glass walls there. And there had been no planning for bird protection there, and the person mentioned it, and DOT made that change in their plans in the nick of time, and now it's in the code, so that's great. Anybody else from either of the committees?
I'm sorry, could I jump in for one quick second here and ask Susan to please put into the chat, or otherwise send me the name of what you just mentioned, because I didn't catch the name of it. Thanks.
Anybody else from either of the committees? And Kay, of course.
I just have actually a function question, and maybe you alluded to this, but what impact will this have on the use of the galleries during construction, and what are their plans for displaying any of the art in other places in the museum, or that sort of thing?
I can speak to that, Michael, if you like.
Sure.
So we're trying to phase the project as much as possible to keep the galleries open as long as possible. So the Pacific galleries are actually closing shortly. Those are the ones that are closest to the curtain wall, so that we can begin to move the objects and conserve them. There's almost 2,500 objects that we will be conserving. Part of this project is not just construction, but about treating the objects with the same level of care that we treat the Greek and Roman collection or the modern and contemporary collection. And so we're actually building auxiliary spaces to treat these objects and bringing on a whole team of conservators. So that work will take 3 years. So we do need to start that now and close some galleries, but the goal is to keep at least some of the galleries open as long as possible. And then there's three ways that we'll be continuing to display the art. One is through a touring exhibit of the Oceania collection to another museum so that it can stay on display even though not in New York. And the other is we're creating satellite exhibits throughout the entire Met Museum of our collection. I don't know if any of you have seen the Crossroads collection, where we bring together different elements of the collection in one place. Will be similar to that. And then the other is online, because that's where our lives have been lately. And so they're going to do some amazing imaging of the objects so that people can spin them around three-dimensionally online. So that's the plan. And then hopefully we can get everything back on view all together as soon as possible.
All right. Anything else from the committees? If not, it looks to me like we've got Megan, Amy, Henry, and Jennifer, who are members of the public who are muted. And Mark, I don't know how I can tell if they have a question.
I will ask them all to unmute. I have also asked our colleague Doug McGowan if he wants to unmute. Doug, if you're on a phone, it's *6 to unmute. Whenever you're ready, if you have a comment or a question, that's the way you do that.
Let's do it this way. Megan Carroll, is there anything you wanted to ask or say?
No, just really insightful presentation. Thank you very much. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Amy Lamberti, you're a member of the public. Anything you want to ask or say?
No, I'm just here watching for the Met. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Henry Miller, are you? I'm not sure if you're a member of the public or.
I'm with BBB Architects.
Okay,
right. No
I
questions.
think you were introduced. Last one, I think, other than our own Paul and Doug, Jennifer Johnson. Are you a member of the public who wants to?
Yeah,
ask something?
just a member of the public, just listening in.
Okay. Any comment or question?
I like the aesthetics of the old one better than the new one for some reason.
Okay, Paul Fischer, we've got on the phone, and Doug McGowan. How do I know if either of them wants to ask or say something?
This is Doug McGowan. No comment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Doug. And Paul Fisher's our last person. Paul, you got anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, Doug.
Okay.
All right, so you can mute yourself now.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of background there. Michelle Kay, what do you want to do next?
Let's get, okay, thanks, Paul. Well, I think I'm not sure how this works, but this is just a joint resolution. Mark's going to write up the resolution and we should take a vote, and maybe we should separate preservation from parks.
Well, I wanted to say, I think we can make it a lot simpler this time. I think that as we normally don't have and would not necessarily look to adopt, certainly not word for word, resolutions of other boards, but in this particular case, I think Board 8 did a fabulous job.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason to rewrite that, and I don't, and at least in this case, Michelle, I don't see any reason to separate the committees either.
Okay.
I also personally would not, to the extent that Susan's suggestion was to add a constraint that is different from the, not only different in language, but different in substance from the DOB requirements, I would not favor adding that to the, personally, I wouldn't favor adding that to the resolution. It sounds like the museum has done plenty of studying of the bird issue, and I wouldn't want to try to have our opinion be that they should be constrained to a particular method. So, so I would be fine basically saying, Mark, you've got an easy job of it here. Let's pretty much go with the Board 8 resolution, but you guys are the chairs of this one.
Anybody want to make a comment to that? Jay, Madge?
No, sounds good to me.
Yeah, I actually was going to suggest the same thing.
Right.
I read the Community Board 8 resolution. It's very complete. And I think, and I understand Susan's concern, but I think the response was that, and I commend the museum. I mean, I think they've done a great job in analyzing and considering all the various aspects, including that. It seems to me we don't have to add to that specifically. I mean, I defer to Susan since I'm
fine with that. I'm fine with that.
Thank you, Susan.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks. Barbara, you okay with that too?
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought their resolution was fantastic, and I see no reason to rewrite it, really.
Okay. So we'll take a vote on the resolution to approve the application as presented. All those in favor, maybe a little blue hand or?
Just before the vote, Michelle, let me ask one thing, and it actually relates to a question I asked the other night. I can't remember whether their finding is in the Board 8 resolution is just appropriate or whether they have any adjective on appropriate. Do you guys remember?
I can read it.
They don't actually use the word appropriate. So one of the changes I will be making is that.
Yep. Okay, good.
I would go with thoroughly appropriate in this case, but it's up to you guys.
Yes.
Okay.
Fabulously appropriate. How about?
Thoroughly sounds good. I don't think I would go to fabulous. I mean, a sort of a little bit odd thing about this one is when the museum was designated, this area didn't exist at all. And the master plan and the Rush-Dinkelo plan was really in derogation of the classical design and was approved by LPC as okay. And I don't know how enthusiastic they were or weren't at the time. So what we're doing here is defending something that wasn't a historical piece anyway and wasn't the basis of the original designation. Nevertheless, I think we need to say in some manner appropriate, and thoroughly is fine with me.
Okay.
Okay.
Mark, you have a question?
Can we see hands? Or, I mean,
I can't raise my blue hand because I'm the host, so I'm voting yes.
So all those in favor?
Can we just all do, and with this small crowd, can we just all do actual hands?
All those in favor?
You guys counting?
Oh, yeah, one.
Joint committee members.
Committee member,
11,
yeah, joint committee.
12,
1, 2, 3,
12.
4, 5.
I've got 12 plus
Doug, are you
Paul
on either
Fisher.
one?
Paul Fisher is
Doug
13.
McGowan in favor.
Doug is 14. So I've got 14 in favor. Anybody opposed?
I think you counted some non-committee members.
Nope.
Nope.
I got everybody.
No, I mean, did you count some board members who aren't committee members?
Nope, I did not.
Oh, okay, all right. Then we have Doug, who's not.
He's Doug is on preservation,
Oh, is he? Oh, I saw.
but not Doug Kleiman.
No, Doug Kleiman.
Doug McGowan.
Doug McGowan.
McGowan is, Kleiman isn't. So we've got 14-0. Well, let's, we have no negatives. We have no
That's everybody.
abstentions.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No
Wait.
conflict of interest.
Right, and then go ahead, keep going.
Okay, then the other count would be non-committee board members, and that's Doug Kleiman
And Stephen.
and Stephen. I don't, oh, okay, we've got 2 yeses.
And Paul's on.
And Paul Fisher.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Paul is,
He's
yeah.
not a committee member.
You're right.
Said
So it's,
he approves.
So that's going to be 3-0-0-0, 14-0-0-0.
no, it's 13. I'm sorry, you were
Oh,
right.
it could be
I counted
13.
Paul. Yeah, I counted Paul. You're right.
13-0-0-0, and then
3-0-0.
Okay. All right, I think we're, the meeting is finished. There was some other thing that Madge and I wanted to talk about, but we could leave till next time if you.
Can we leave it? Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Good.
If I can just make one other suggestion for the drafting, and again, I don't remember whether it's in the Board 8 resolution, which is very thorough, but I would, if it's not there, I would suggest some very general thing that commends the thoroughness, thoughtfulness of the presentation.
There actually is.
Is there? Okay.
There is language.
Okay.
Hey,
Yes.
Okay.
Commended
just
on the
second that.
thoroughness and beauty of their stunning presentation. That's what it says in the resolution.
Now you're
Oh, all
going
right,
with it.
All right,
That doesn't-
so, thank you. I think we can end the meeting.
Okay.
good night.
Pleasure doing business with you guys.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Good
We
luck with it
appreciate
all.
the presentation,
Thank you.
looking forward to this. And let's hope everything gets better now and those tourists come back.
I'm looking forward to
Excellent
going back.
proposal. Thank you. No.
All right,
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
thank you. The
right.
meeting is over.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks a
Take care.
lot.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Well done, guys.
Yeah.